Welcome to the November board meeting of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. This is our monthly regular board meeting. I'm going to ask the clerk of the board for roll call.
Yes, Director Salata?
Here.
Director Carpenter?
Here.
Director Berkstein?
Present.
Director Crowley? Present. Director Ites?
Here.
Okay.
If you would, if you join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There's nothing to report out of closed session. So, public comment number 2. If anybody wants to speak to the board about anything that is on or not on the agenda, please feel free. Okay. Menlo Park Firefighters Benevolent Report.
Yep. My name is Walt Vidas, and on behalf of the Menlo Park Firefighters, there's nothing to report at this time.
Well, you guys are taking a little holiday.
It's a slow time.
Yeah, Christmas is coming up.
Yes, it is. So it's going to get busy, but right now there's nothing to report.
So, quick question.
Sure.
So, do you have a date for that toy drive?
I can't answer that question, but I can probably get it for you.
Okay.
I'd have to ask John.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, I'll have to ask John. So I'll find out and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Find out right now.
Let's find out right now.
I'll be back.
Okay.
So we have a presentation from the Girl Scouts regarding the Pulse Point phone applications. You may say something.
I'm going to say one quick thing. So these Girl Scouts have been awesome. They have as their sole project to get Pulse Point app all throughout San Mateo County. And I've had the privilege of working with them to help them do this. And I know that Harold and the chief and other chiefs around the county have also done the same. So we're trying to just secure the last bit of funding before it's implemented throughout San Mateo County for 5 years just to see. But so far, I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder. They've been successful. So y'all, you should tell your story because it's fantastic. Thanks for doing this.
I go here.
Yeah, that's perfect, sir.
Awesome. So I'm Serafina Casey. I'm a Girl Scout from Menlo Park, and like Virginia said, my Girl Scout Silver Award project has been to implement Pulse Point into San Mateo County. So like I said, it's for my Silver Award. The Silver Award is the highest award that a Girl Scout cadet can earn. And the other Girl Scouts in here are earning their government patch by helping me with this. So a bit of background about CPR that I don't think you guys need, but when sudden cardiac arrest occurs, the person needs CPR right away. And the typical, it takes several minutes for emergency vehicles to get to the site of emergency, to arrive, to set up equipment, and to begin saving the life. Over the half of the adults in the United States are trained in CPR according to one survey, and out of that, only about 10% have actually used it in a real life situation. And because of all that, the national survival rate of sudden cardiac is very low. So that's where Pulse Point comes in. Pulse Point is an app that you can download onto your smartphone for free. And if you're CPR trained, you can sign up on the app. And then when a person goes into sudden cardiac arrest, and a bystander calls 911, an alert is sent out to all the people who have signed up on Pulse Point who are nearby the victim. So you get a push notification on your smartphone saying CPR is needed at this address. And it also gives you a map showing where you are, where the victim is, and where the nearest AEDs are. So this is what it looks like, the push notification, and then the map with the person as the blue dot, the AED as the yellow symbol, and the victim as the red symbol. So our funding situation, we have the installation expenses covered. The AMR donated $1,600, and the Peninsula Healthcare District gave $4,200, and the Sequoia Healthcare District gave $4,200 as well. So we're covered for installation costs. And for the annual expenses of $12,000, we're still looking for, or investigating some sources, and we're having a meeting on that later this week. So for my Silver Ward project, the first step was to work with the county to have Pulse Point enabled on the 911 system. So I presented to the County Board of Supervisors about a month ago, I think, and they're very enthusiastic about this. So once we get the funding covered, they will install it on the 911 system. We're also having a meeting on Friday with Mike Callaghy, the Deputy County Manager, to talk about how they would actually install Pulse Point. And so the next step in my project would be to work with the Girl Scouts in our community to make a map of where all the AEDs are. We don't currently have a county-wide map, so we would make it in sort of a contest form to find where all of the AEDs are. And then the third step would be to work with the Girl Scouts again to get people throughout our county to sign up on Pulse Point, and kind of get it going in our county. And then these are a list of people who have helped throughout my project. Yeah, and if you are here right now. That's all I have. Are there any questions or things I can clarify?
I have one. You said that it's in public areas. Does that mean like any building that's open to the public, for instance, like an office building, if they have an AED installed, you have to identify where that's at, as long as it has public access?
You mean for the AED map?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So then the app would identify that it was in that particular office building?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Does it just say the office building, or does it give a location within that office building? First floor, second floor?
I'm not sure actually, because I don't have access to what it looks like because it's not in our county, but. Right, I'll ask Richard Price and I can let you guys know.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a great idea.
I just downloaded the app, so thank you for letting me know it exists. And then I put in my zip code and it said, no agencies in your area, and that's exactly the thing that you're working on.
Right.
But what a great idea, because I know, for example, that there's been a lot of publicity given to Seattle, Washington, which has really emphasized training a lot of people. And it's said that if you have a cardiac event in Seattle, you're probably never more than 20 feet away from somebody who's had CPR training. And the results in terms of survival rate are substantially higher. And it's exactly this kind of thing which is going to help, because people driving down the road and suddenly know, oh, there's an event taking place and I can go help. I don't know if anybody saw it on the news tonight, but there was a young lady who was in I guess a Costco store.
Yes.
And they caught it on video camera where she just went up and there was this infant. And she did CPR and the infant saved her life.
She was a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a powerful tool, but particularly with the new techniques where you don't do mouth to mouth anymore.
Right.
It's much easier to learn and much less scary to do it.
I have a question also. What does it mean to get it installed on the 911 system?
So the way it works is that when 911 is called saying this person isn't breathing, they need help, it's kind of tied into the 911 system so that when vehicles are sent out, it sends out the alert to Post Point with it.
So it's basically our dispatch center,
Right.
which as you know is a centralized dispatch center. So
It's in CAD.
Is it in the CAD
Dispatch.
system?
It has to be programmed in. The irony is, in this county, this is the last county around here to do it,
Yeah.
but only because this county has a consolidated dispatch. And you would think that would make it easier, but it actually made it more difficult. So, I mean, it wasn't an easy challenge for them to overcome. Because you look at the cost for the programming that has to occur too. And Rich Price started in this county. So he worked at Belmont San Carlos Fire Department there, South County. So, you know, he knew what needed to be done. We've been having this discussion for years, so when the Girl Scouts stepped up, they said, well, perfect, they could say no to the Chiefs, maybe they can't say no to the Girl Scouts, and they pulled it off. So it's something we couldn't do even as the fire chiefs.
Well, and so part of the whole funding we're looking at is countywide, quite frankly, because it's because of the centralized dispatch system. So I know that like when I spoke with the Sequoia Healthcare District president, the board president, he said, well, let's look at Peninsula, you know, just to make sure, since this is going to be a countywide system, that everyone, as many people as possible, stakeholders as possible, are brought into this and are, you know, supporting it financially as well.
One of the places, if you haven't talked to them, you can talk to the Kaiser Family Foundation.
Oh, that's
Because-
a good one.
Yeah. Pardon?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because they are in the county, and they have as one of their missions doing local health-related things. So, and this is not big bucks for them. You know, this is rounding error. So,
So again, it's just that last piece, and so we're working with South City and some people up there. They really wanted to buy it. They said, oh, you know, we're looking for that additional $5,000,
well,
right?
when the Sequoia Hospital District, you know, dissipates, they can give this money.
Peter, we're not going there tonight. But thank y'all for doing this. It is
Thank you very
Thank you.
And Harold, thank you for bringing them to us.
All I did was point in the right direction, they did all the work. And like I said, it's a true statement. The chiefs have brought this up before, but we're one customer amongst many at that dispatch center. So when they approached the board of supervisors, which was the right angle to get it going, that's what did it. And they came with the money. That's the other part, part of this thing. If you don't have a funding source, it's more difficult. So they've got pretty much together all lined up. And then, you gotta give them a lot of credit because no one's ever done the AED research for the county. So that's a great project too, to figure out where all those things are.
Also, this might be a really good time for you because they are building a new OES, Office of Emergency Services facility there at the county. So there's a lot of that measuring that they're looking at.
So they talked to Jamie Young. So she's looking into the Measure A dollars, and then we hope to have an answer when we meet with Mr. Callaghan on Friday.
It's the money man.
Well, and I've spoken with Don Horsley about it a little as well, so it's, but I mean, the main thing I think is that the board of supervisors have kind of supported it in the first way, so it's just a matter of just getting that little piece.
Mike will be very helpful to you. He used to be the deputy chief in the city of San Mateo Police Department. And he just went over to the county as an assistant county manager for public safety, so he'll be really receptive.
Good.
Helpful to you.
Yeah, so we'll meet with him on Friday, hopefully,
Great.
get things lined up for the annual.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you all so
Good
much
job.
for your
I had a
support.
question. Did you taking donations? I'll give you $100 right now.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Just
you so
stretch
much.
out. You're welcome.
Take one off. I only need
Where is he?
Okay. Anything else? All right. That brings us to a public hearing. And the public hearing has to do with the second reading of the ordinance 36A 2013, which is the adoption of the 2012 International Fire Code with necessary California amendments for the city of Menlo Park. And with that, I will open the public hearing. Is there any comments? Before we close the public hearing.
Right now, right there you
And we
go.
will close the public hearing.
And for those of you who came to the presentation, don't feel obligated to stay, because it's not really that exciting.
No, but I have something in my director's report. That's why I'm asking them to stay for a
Okay.
few more minutes.
Okay?
Okay. So, I would entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstained?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
So this evening, the same item is being heard at the Menlo Park City Council chambers by the City of Menlo Park, the council. John Johnson's over there to answer their questions. We don't know, I know Director Ryanson's reached out, some of you have as well, I've done it. We're hoping it's just gonna go through. John was studying all
Is it on the
afternoon.
consent calendar, or is it?
Well,
No, it's
It's
on
not.
regular calendar with staff
but
report.
we're hoping they're gonna accept it as written. If they don't, then we'll be bringing those sections back to you, and we'll know, who voted what way and why, what the concerns are. Try to address all the concerns in advance.
If they don't accept it, they're still stuck with what exists, right?
With the minimum.
Now, Steve and I talked about that.
Well-
Because that's an interesting question.
If they don't certify this ordinance that you just introduced for second reading and adopted a moment ago, then they're stuck with whatever preceded that. They have to accept this.
Yes.
And if they want to make another change, most of what you're doing tonight is simply confirming the changes they asked for. We gotta come back and do another minor amendment, but
So,
there's a path forward.
so the impetus to them is if they want to update their sprinkler ordinance, for example. Is this tied in?
Well, that's it. If you say the sprinkler ordinance, so you have two pieces to that.
Okay.
One is, the commercial is not their sprinkler ordinance. The commercial goes back to 1984 on assessed valuation is the district's sprinkler ordinance, because that was before the cities were given this jurisdiction. If it's the residential, then it is the cities, because they adopted the state code, which is what it was under. They, like the other organizations that we serve, never adopted a sprinkler ordinance that we propose. In fact, as long as I've been the fire chief, don't take it as a negative, this is even before that time, I don't think they've adopted an ordinance for the fire district all the way back to 1984. So it's monumental that we're there. It's taken us years to get there. And, hopefully it'll go through, but we'll see what portions they're not.
Okay, but the default is not no ordinance, but what currently exists.
Right. It will probably be some type of, educational and negotiation process.
I presume it went to the council with a recommendation from staff.
It went with we sent them the same ordinance that you have. We found one issue in it that their staff had, we think, presented incorrectly, which was a 10-year clawback on accumulation if you were doing a remodel of the percentage of remodel you were doing. That is not what ours says. Ours says it's effective starting next year and going forward.
Cumulative moving forward.
Correct. So if you had a bunch of things in the file for your home that you'd done remodels, that
But
would work against
in
you.
the council packet, was it presented with the staff report?
So that staff report, which is incorrect, was caught, and actually to thank Fran Dean at the chamber, she caught it. We did not catch that, and we since have now
Okay.
educated them
The
that that's
bottom
incorrect.
line, when the staff report that went to the council tonight, did it have a recommendation to approve?
It has a recommendation to approve, and
Okay.
those issues John's addressing all those
Great,
concerns.
thank you. We've come a long way if you've got a staff
Long way.
report recommending approval.
You know that. How many years has it been?
Are you referring to their staff report or
Or
ours?
it went to the
Their
city
staff.
council?
Their staff report
Yeah.
for that
That's a major
amendment.
accomplishment.
And it included the ordinance, it was 68 pages long.
Right. So it's a big deal to get there. Hopefully we'll go through unscathed, but even if we don't, the majority of items get approved, then that's a win, and we'll work on the rest.
Good. All right. That brings us to reports and requests. President's report. Some of it's in Chief Chappell-Holman's report, but we went to the memorial service for Kelly Seitz, who was one of the firefighters involved. He was from Santa Clara, but he was involved in the urban search and rescue team. We went to the state of the city of Menlo Park, and did that. Also, Director Crowley, myself, the chief, and John Johnson from Fire Prevention went to the state of the city in East Palo Alto last night. Interesting part of it is directly after that presentation and meeting, they had a meeting for their general plan for the future. It's interesting and it's refreshing because we actually have a seat at the table and they have a lot of stuff going on. It's not finalized yet, but they got big plans and they invited us to participate in those plans. And we're hoping that that's kind of a gauge that some of the other entities that we deal with will invite us to the table too. So it's encouraging. Anything, that's all I have, Brady. Any reports and requests from directors?
I have a report.
Okay.
So, I was actually at the Silicon Valley chapter Red Cross Heroes Breakfast. I hosted a table and I invited the Girl Scouts because one of the honorees was the humanitarian award honoree was Pulse Point. And they were featured and they were the fundee for that morning. And actually Richard Price recognized Serafina and called her his hero for trying to get Pulse Point into San Mateo County. And so I'm going to just lather on some warm praise and thanks again to you because it's a big undertaking and I know that a lot of people appreciate what you're doing and I know Richard Price does. So you got a lot of attention and you might be nominated as the youth hero next year for all I know. Let's just get this thing going. So I just wanted to let you know that I know that he appreciated it and I'm glad that y'all can be here too. But, yeah. You're welcome. So then the other thing is, I think that y'all saw this, it's the CERT video. I know Peter sent it out about the CERT class, which was really great. It was the last CERT class that I participated in and I know that having talked to some of my classmates, they were excited that the video turned out so well. And thanks for making the comments, Harold. The comments were good. Thanks for sending that out. I didn't know it was on KQED.
On October 28th, I attended the Bay Area Digital Summit, and that involved emergency management, law enforcement, and fire, different types of software. And I saw some presentations, good and bad. So I came up with a little bit of an evaluation. Not as nice as, it's not as good as what you presented here, believe me. I also, on November 6th, attended the 100 Club in San Mateo County. It's a club of individuals, and we set up a memorial support fund for law enforcement officers who were killed in line of duty in San Mateo County. So we had our dinner on November 6th. And myself, as President Einstein did on November 13th, we attended the State of the City in Menlo Park. And our chief received a proclamation for all his fine work and years of dedicated service. I definitely wanted to be here for that, to support you. And thank you for your years of service. I'm glad you were recognized. And the other employees of the fire district too. That's all I have. Thank you. You're welcome. That's all I have. That's all I have.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to recognize a volunteer in the Willows, Steve Chafee, who heads up the CERT organization in the Willows. He sent out to several people a document which he calls a 72-hour earthquake emergency response protocol. It's very cool. I'm so happy we're finally moving on a plan. It's done at the volunteer level. It basically has a map of Willow Oaks Park with, there's medical facilities, there's even an animal run, an animal shelter there, triage and medical facilities, all sorts of things, water and power all set up, and he's got basically a plan for every hour after an earthquake, the first 72 hours, a plan for what the CERT volunteers in the Willows would do. And this is the kind of thing that I really wanted to see throughout the district from CERT. And I'm glad that somebody has taken the lead on it, because I think it could be a model once it's finalized and so forth. The idea here is that CERT would be essentially independent of the district just while they're sort of assessing things before, things are reestablished and so forth. And it just is basically a roadmap of what a CERT should do starting in the first hour after a serious earthquake or something. So anyway, I just want to be sure that Steve Tafey is recognized for the leadership he's bringing to that area.
Would you make sure that can you pass that on?
Well, it's just a draft right now. I will make sure that he passes it on to everybody once he finalizes it.
And to Carol, so that she can pass it on to the other CERT leaders in the other areas in the district.
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to use a couple of these key leaders as a CERT. Steve's already on the advisory. No, he's not. Is he on the advisory?
He's on,
Yeah,
he's on the advisory committee.
right. But I'm hoping that they'll actually take, they're not supposed to be operational people, they're supposed to be kind of policy people. I hope that we will get an operations group out of that will take leadership in terms of training all the CERTs.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? Human Resources Committee report.
Okay, we met, Director Carpenter and I met on November 4th, election
Thank you very
day.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And basically the two items on the consent calendar are items 14 and 15. But we also talked about the chief's evaluation, and just as a reminder, that is due on November 21st to the paralegal at Myers Nave, and I will be sending out another reminder, and we're going to get that done. That's pretty much the HR committee report.
Okay.
You have anything to add, Peter?
Thank you.
Liaison reports. Go ahead.
So as the president said, we attended along with Chief Chappell-Holman the State of the City address in East Palo Alto. And at that time, I know that we all met the new police chief, Chief Pardini, and
Yes.
the interim city manager. So I think that things are moving along, and they've got their election is finalized. So their council is going to be pretty stable as they go through this transition time. So I think it's good that they have their police chief in place. I think they're doing the search for the permanent city manager at this point.
Atherton.
Chief, you want to cover your?
No, go ahead, whatever you want to say.
No, I'm doing
Well,
something.
we had a, let's see, this is on tape. We had a very productive meeting with Councilmember Whitmer and the town manager and the chief and myself. And I think the concern from the town manager's perspective was that he felt that the town was getting some criticism for its failure to do certain things, and he wanted to try to eliminate those criticisms. And I think we agreed the best way to eliminate the criticisms was to make sure that the chief and the town manager work more closely together, and that as long as they work more closely together, then there wouldn't be anything to criticize. That's a fair recap?
That's fair. Criticize, no, but maybe always not agreed on, so, we'll see.
But I think we made it, I think it was very clear to all of us involved that we really do expect the fire chief and the town manager to communicate more effectively, and for the fire district to be kept in the loop earlier on issues in the town which have an impact on us.
Good.
That's a fair statement.
Good. How about San Mateo County?
I spoke to Warren Slocum, and he says everything is on path. All these projects that I
Okay.
spoke to you about, when he talked about the fire routes, he said that you were all on task with that,
He heard from us, yes.
right? And then the older apartment building project
Yes.
that John and you were working on, he said that you all are on task with that too. In fact, I just got an email today involving the progress of that, and I thank you and John for keeping me in the loop with that. And so it appears that Supervisor Slocum is very happy.
Good.
So thank you for that.
So what does that mean with respect to the Middlefield project?
Well, it means they're gonna go through and still do the study, but they've heard, we provided comments at the County Board of Supervisors meeting to them, which previously they had not heard until they heard from us.
Right.
On the apartment units that Director Salon is referring to, Redwood City had those large fires, and what they're trying to do is do some sort of an ordinance that would allow incentives for retrofitting and putting in sprinklers. A lot of those older buildings that have been burning pretty well over there. We'll see. That's because a lot of those are protected by Prop 13, and so there's not remodel in the future until you burn them down, apparently. So that's going to be the challenge. It's not the way you want to do it, but yeah, at least he's working on it. I give him credit for at least trying to do something with the big apartment complexes over there where we have a lot of those. They have them on their side in Redwood, and we have them on our side too. And they're packed full of people.
It's kind of been a dark hole that really hasn't been addressed.
Yeah.
And because Supervisor Slocum is actually taking the lead on this, and actually with the support of the chief and the
And
new
Redwood
fire
City's chief.
and the new fire marshal and the Redwood City chief.
And I give him the credit because the fires were in Redwood City, so I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Redwood City. But you know, obviously the supervisor's trying to do something here. Again, whether he's going to be successful with incentives will be the million-dollar question.
What kinds of incentives are they looking at?
Basically, what they're trying to do is say that they would cover some of the costs for putting in the sprinklers and give them, and how they would do that is to give them credits and some breaks on taxes and so forth. But again, these are pre-Prop 13 buildings, and so, you know, how that affects them doing any type of remodel work by waiving permit fees and so forth, that's going to be yet to be determined. I mean, whether they have any desire to do it at all.
Does the county have the ability to reduce property taxes?
I don't know. That's I think right now he's proposing this. He's going to need to get it all vetted through the system. I don't know. I've never seen
a full-time.
I've never seen this done
staffer
before.
that's working on the project.
But he's trying something.
Seems like maybe they could reduce the assessed value or something, but I think the tax rate is set by Prop 13.
Yeah. And I don't want to tell you that's exactly what he's doing, but I know they're trying to do something.
And you have some really great relationships when you dealt with the school sprinkler issue at the state
Right.
level. And it may well be the way that we can approach this, and I think that there have been one or two examples of something like this. Have the state controller, whoever it is that sort of deals with the interpretation of Prop 13, issue a ruling that simply says that the installation of fire sprinklers will not count as a accessible improvement. And that would, I think, make a huge difference. Because right now they're saying, hey, if we go spend X thousand dollars, and that increases the value of the property, and then we have to pay taxes on it. And who was the state assembly guy who?
Lempert.
Ted Lippert.
And then there were a couple of other people who also
It
seemed.
was Lempert, and then it became,
Joe Smith.
no, it wasn't Joe. I'm trying to remember the other legislator.
Yeah.
Lempert was the lead. He's the one that picked it up.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now, I mean, obviously, you know, it's primarily Redwood City we're in support, but, you know, it is Warren Slocum that's trying to do something. Again, I give him credit for that.
Do we have the same concerns in our district?
You bet. We have the same concerns in East Palo Alto. I mean, you have, anywhere you have housing right now that's not new. I mean, the good news is in the East Palo Alto meeting, I don't want to get into the chief's report yet, but, you know, that meeting last night and the state of the city, and then the 2035 or 32 plan that they're trying to put in place, it's a big deal. Because if they can change some of the construction in the city and build new, it's all gonna be up to code. It's all the old stuff that's problematic.
All along the freeway, you know, that big apartment complex, it is a disaster.
There's 100 apartment complexes out there, which are all owned by one owner pretty much now. It used to be Page Mill Properties until they went bankrupt, which was actually owned by Hertz.
First, right?
So,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that someday, but tonight's not the night.
That's a whole chapter,
Uh,
3, 4, 5, 6.
So from Menlo Park, I met with Peter Ortaki, and the most of the discussion had to do with the fire ordinances before them tonight. He agreed that he thought it was a good ordinance. Unfortunately, he's going to be phoning in. He's going to be there in person, so I'm hoping for the best, but yeah.
Does it make any sense for us to let them know that we passed it or anything? Would that?
No, they know that
They
because it
know
had to
that.
get to them.
Yeah, because we passed it on, we passed it on the first reading, and then we had a second reading, we just reaffirmed it. That was the public part of it.
No, I know, I just wondered if John needed to know that we had.
Oh, he knows. John and I had lunch today and we're strategizing, you know, what else we could say or do, but, you know, we'll find out again if there's any disagreement in what it is.
Thanks for sending him.
He's the right guy for the job.
That brings us to a report of the fire chief, and if there's any discussion on that report from the fire chief, which is item number 8, agenda item number 8.
I just have one,
Yes.
2 questions. One, I saw you had a staff meeting,
Yeah.
and,
Every 2 months.
right, and you said here, we also discussed other important items, and I hope that was what we discussed,
It
was
was.
the strategic plan.
It is. In fact, we're doing that in December, and they know that's the focus of the next meeting.
Right. And the Team 100 for the 100th anniversary, I know the president is on that board, and so
Could you tell
it's
us
in
a
good
little-
hands.
Could you tell us a little more about that?
You or me?
Our 100th anniversary is coming up, so
Fine.
we have started already, it'll be in 2016, so we've already started, you know, what kind of events can we
Thank you.
do? And what are some of the things that we thought that there was a group of them, and there's some citizens, you know, that have been involved in the community, there's fire department guys. What do we want to do to celebrate that? Banners was brought up, you know, like down in Martian, Middlefield, special T-shirts, putting another thing on our apparatus that says, you know, 100 years of service, those kind of things. Luncheon, and just recognition at fire department and public events. So,
I sent a photo to the chief and the Rex, but I was in another jurisdiction, and saw this fire engine, and on the side of it, it had the slogan, "We make house calls." We still make house calls.
After 100 years, we still make house calls.
you item, we fight it, we got that part.
So in a, you know, this isn't necessarily in here this way, but just a summary on Atherton, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, county, although, you know, it's only one supervisor, I would say we didn't really hear a state of the county yet, but, you know, maybe they're gonna do that. My advice would be, from all those meetings that we've been to, one of the things, and I'll use Atherton as an example, that set the tone in Atherton, and Peter and I discussed this with the manager and one of the council members, was that you had a joint district board council meeting. And I have to tell you, with the town of Atherton, of course, it was after a grand jury investigation and a lot of, you know, things ended up in the newspaper, which, you know, were fortunate and unfortunate, but it really improved our relationship, I have to say, for probably about 3 to 5 years. Because it set the tone for what we needed to work on collectively, and everybody was on board. Now, some of the directors are still here who were there back then. I thought that was a great opportunity. And it certainly made it easier for staff. We've been trying that for a long time with the city of Menlo Park. It hasn't worked yet, but it doesn't mean it won't or can't work. So, you know, whether it's Atherton or Menlo Park or even East Palo Alto, what I would suggest to the board members is if we can have joint meetings and get joint, you know, goals, or you can attend their strategic planning meetings, you're invited, it certainly makes it easier because it lines up a collective vision, which if you don't have that, it makes it much more difficult to get things done. And I think part of what happened in Atherton was, and it happened in the county too, is they got ahead of themselves. The district is a partner. Emergency response is a factor. And, you know, you can't say you're gonna change El Camino and not get a reaction from us, or Middlefield, you know, or have issues in Menlo Park with, you know, an ordinance that hasn't been passed in years. I mean, that's where that relationship building and that joint goal setting or strategic planning is really important to be together on. So you see me kind of move around the map here with the jurisdictions, but that's a big deal. So hopefully next year we can focus. I know it's the same board, they have different council members in some cases, or sometimes the same. That's a big deal, because I think we're moving that way. We just haven't had that opportunity. Atherton has said they're gonna try and do it. I don't know about Menlo Park or East Palo Alto. I think maybe they could.
Well, so at the State of the City address last night, I know that the mayor actually talked about the fire station, the new fire station, and was proud of the partnership that they have with the fire district. And I think it's great that, you know, that we do have a seat at the table. So, you know, I just wanted to commend you for that. I know it's a relationship that we've worked hard on to.
And it changes every time you have a new mayor.
Mayor,
New
council,
manager.
Yeah, I mean, and it's almost like it's a revolving door.
It is.
there. So we're like the consistent thread for them in many ways, which I think they appreciate very much.
Right. Well, I think that's what Peter and I mean, when we were sitting there having this discussion, the manager and the council member don't remember that because they weren't around. So, you know, all that's changed out. So you almost have to recycle it. And I think you get a lot, like I said, I think we got about 3 to 5 years of benefit of having a really good relationship and common goals that really helped us. But as people change out, then you lose that focus. And I think that's part of where we ended up not agreeing with them on things because they forgot that they needed to really include us. Yes, sir.
I don't know how it works in Menlo Park, Atherton, or East Palo Alto, but I know in Palo Alto, when a development project is submitted, there's an initial meeting where all the interest groups are there. They're all under the same roof in the city because fire is there and so forth. But they have this meeting and there might be 8 or 10 different departments represented there. Public Works and Planning and you know, the outdoor stuff in parks and rec and so forth. And so they go around and they say, yeah, this is going to affect this. And they sort of tell the developer what they're going to need, what the issues are, and so forth. Is there a comparable thing in terms of for major developments in Menlo Park and East Palo Alto and Atherton?
Well, so let me answer your question directly, and I'll give Director Solano some credit for going the Wayback Machine on these, or other directors that have brought things up. So there's formal process like what's called DRT, Design Review Team. So Design Review Team, we're involved in different jurisdictions when it gets to that point. And in times past when we haven't gotten that, I can tell you that Rob has contacted me, or other directors, Director Carpenter's contacted me about projects that are coming that we don't know about, or that we didn't hear about, or somehow we didn't even notice about. What I see as the weakness that we've had is like these meetings that you're having, like you have in East Palo Alto, when they're developing on the community side the values, the priorities, and the focus. And if nobody from fire is there, because typically we're not a city entity, so you're not always invited to that party, a lot of that groundwork gets done, as we saw in North Fair Oaks, because it was a recommendation of the community to reduce the number of lanes of traffic. You know, and that's the same thing that's going on. So the meetings, I know that we've been to 3 of those meetings for the M2 in Menlo Park, and I know you and I talked about, you know, another one of these meetings, it's kind of the same thing. Well, it is, but it is having an effect where they're actually including us now in conversations that are going forward, going to have an effect on us. So it's amazing actually how much negotiation, discussion, and priorities are being set at the community level. And if you don't have any input or feedback down there, it's going to have a huge effect on us down the road when you get to the year 2.
Yeah, 2 things on this, one of which is in our meeting with Apton, and I suggested to the town manager, I said, look, you know, we are your fire department. Now, and if you have an issue that you're talking around at a staff meeting, and you want representation from the fire department, you should say to the chief, I've got a meeting, send somebody over.
Right.
Palo Alto, the fire chief is part of the management team, and so when a project comes in, they're on the sign-off sheet. If it hasn't gone by fire, it doesn't get it. And so we have to sort of insert ourselves in that in order for it to happen. And then we just got this unbelievable email from Menlo Park on the 13th of November saying, we're redoing our general plan, and we'd like to have your comments by the 19th. Now, it's nice that they asked us, but you know, that's not a very big window for us to give response to something as important as the general plan. And so I'm basically working with the chief based on my experience as a planning commissioner, saying, here's some of the issues that we should put on the table. Now, we won't necessarily get them, but the sooner we put them on the table, the more likely we are. For example, I'm suggesting that as part of the general plan discussion, we have them create a new zone in the city of Menlo Park called fire services, separate and distinct from PF zone. And in a fire service zone, you have an FAR of 0.6, you have a height of 40 feet, we don't have customers, we don't have parking, you know, so all of those things are, to a large degree, you know, should not be incorporated in a fire services zone. And now whether we'll get that or not, I don't know, but at least we'll sort of put it on the table. And probably put in another 10 feet for, on top of the 40 feet for an antenna kind of thing. My sense is if we can get into that discussion early, you know, we will be better off than if we come up with, here's the draft of the general plan, and we have to then fight with redoing the draft. So, but if we can get these communities to, the managers are the key people, who are the chief's counterpart. When something comes across their desk and they say, gee, if I had a fire chief, I would get his input on this. Hopefully we get them to pick the phone up and say, Harold, you know, I need your input on this, or would you send the staff person to this meeting? Or to, you know, this conference we're gonna have, or whatever.
Well, and you're absolutely right, Peter, but a lot of it has to do with Harold's relationship and actually our relationships with the political officials. As with the G2, Harry Brims had sent me an email and I had forwarded to you wanting our input as fire. And those types of relationships, as you said, are really important to have.
Yeah, the way, one of the things we did in Atherton is we got a couple council members who were really sensitized to it. And so when stuff came to council, they said, well, have you talked to the fire district? I said, no, we didn't.
As Bill Woodward.
You know, why not? You know, and so that's the way that we sort of created pressure for them to start connecting with Harold.
That's true.
Anything else?
That's it. So again, my suggestion would just be continue to reach out, and you know, that way we're included, because we need to be included.
That brings us to the consent calendar. I would entertain a motion to.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Wait, we'll get to pull things off.
What would you like to pull off?
Like, just a moment to be able to say it.
Okay.
Let me ask just a quick question. I had made some minutes corrections on item number 9. We don't need to pull that off, is that correct? Okay. I'd like to pull off number 15, please.
21?
Yes.
Okay.
I would just like to, on item 23, on the October 21st special board meeting,
You mean for the minutes, Rob?
yeah, involving the minutes, it talks about commercial storage facility. I was more into the information not being sold commercially, whatever is obtained through drone usage. And then secondly, which was covered by Chief Fione, was to establish policies and procedures before the purchase of the drone. And the chief and I had already spoken about that when he floated this to us. But I just wanted to make sure that those were in there because of some of the concerns that the city of Menlo Park had with the license plate readers.
Very well. Very well.
Okay. So I have
some
All right.
minor changes. I'll talk to the clerk about minor changes in the minutes, minor, very minor.
So I just want to make sure.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 15.
Okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. So that brings us to item 15.
I have two reasons for pulling this. One is that I'd like a separate vote that wasn't part of the consent calendar, so that there was a vote on the item itself. And the second thing is that, I guess I don't understand, it doesn't even seem, a judge has made a ruling on this. I don't see why we need to deal with this now. Why am I asking to vote, why am I being asked to vote on something that I have no choice about? And I just don't understand the purpose of it, so I guess I direct that question to our attorney.
My recollection is that you're required by the ruling to do this.
To revoke the resolution?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can clarify a little because it came up in the Human Resources Committee meeting, and Peter, if you remember something else, please add on. But so according to the HR manager, since this was a board resolution before, that when it was approved, it needs to basically be in a board resolution to disapprove. That's why we're doing that today.
Well, I would prefer to counsel. I think we got direction from her,
Right.
and we have to,
Right. Well,
we have to
that's
comply.
right. Pretty much. That's it.
We can't just simply allow the resolution to stay there as it was. We have to make these changes.
Correct.
So we have to revoke.
We need to, yeah, it needs to be a resolution based on the per ruling.
Correct.
What this does is revoke that, what certain parts of it that are spelled out in here.
It seems odd that a state agency can direct how I vote on something. And I can see the judge invalidating it and so forth, but I don't see why they would require me to vote aye on a motion. I mean,
The directive was to order you to rescind the prior resolution.
So moved.
And that doesn't mean you have to vote for it.
well, what if all this voted
Well,
against
then,
it?
And we send your
Steve has got a problem.
So I would, any other questions? Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve item.
So moved.
A second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Those abstaining? All right, that brings us to the regular agenda. Item 16, accept the disability retirement from William McFarland, and I believe the chief has that one.
Yeah, you actually did that and reported out from closed session last time and talked to the legal counsel. You didn't really even need to do this, but we put this on there just so it's transparent. You've already authorized this, so now in a public setting, the board has agreed to authorize or allow Bill McFarland to retire and accept his disability retirement.
I move that we ratify the board's decision.
A second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Item 17, consider and approve a resolution authorizing fire chief for its sole source for defibrillator.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item 18, consider, discuss, and provide direction to staff on cost recovery for the county portion of the weekend acres. Is there any discussion? You have that one?
I do. So, when we last discussed this, the direction was to bring in Martha Priatos from LAFCO and have her do a presentation. There was no discussion after that, obviously, because she just gave a presentation. What we tried to do in this report is combine the report that I'd done previously to that meeting with giving you the options, which are referenced in here, I believe 5 options that are listed. The board had preference for 2 of them at the time, but wanted to hear the presentation from LAFCO. So you see the information from LAFCO at this point. I just need to know if there's any further direction, if the prioritization of the 5 options, if you see a different one, or you want to choose one of those. We just need the staff to know what the next move you need us or want us to make, or no move at all. I mean, at this point, we would have to petition the county and go through the negotiation process for the property tax. There seems to be a desire to move through the process and annex those areas in there, but again, I just need more specific direction.
I'd like to make a motion that we not discontinue service to this area for any reason, and that we pursue option 5.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Could we divide, that's actually 2 different issues, I think, Peter.
Okay.
Could I ask
Fine. Okay, my first motion is that, consistent with the staff recommendation, that we continue to provide service to this area without interruption.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that. From the discussion we had before, it's clear that the fire service may look at this as a moral issue and so forth, and that we denying service is really something that should never be done. But I think that I represent taxpayers, and clearly diverting our resources to a non-paying group isn't fair to the people we represent. And I think that in a sense, we're going into a negotiation where there's no incentive for the county to say, yes, go ahead. All the county has to do is say, no, you do service and we'll get the money, sorry. And that's the end of it. I mean, it seems to me we shouldn't take away the threat that we would discontinue service and say to the county, you have a couple choices. You can either build a fire station nearby to serve them, you can contract with us for us to serve them, or you can annex and let the money follow the annexation. And I mean, we could, as part of our contract, demand that we get tax revenue at our rate, which is higher than the county rate. And the compromise might be to accept the county's, the amount the county is getting for it. They just simply pass it through to us. And that would be kind of a compromise. But what we're doing is giving away any leverage we have with the county. And I say this because we've been talking about this for a long time, people moan and groan about it. I just feel like if we want to solve the problem, we ought to solve the problem, we ought to stand tall, and we ought to say, give them time, 2 years. Say, you got 2 years to solve this, but after 2 years, we're not going to provide service. This isn't part of mutual aid. We give you, you give us nothing. And we're not going to do that anymore after 2 years, in fairness. We're going to divert our resources to this group that doesn't pay us. It's not the people's fault, it's the county's fault. Anyway, I think we can proceed, but I don't think we should take away the weapon that we have or the leverage that we have to discontinue service.
Well, that means withdrawing from the mutual aid agreements that we're party to.
Actually, it's auto aid, right?
No.
That is an
It
auto
is auto
aid.
aid.
I would, just knowing, since CAL FIRE is the county fire service, they were instrumental and very important during the San Bruno incident when they had the extra hose extender trailers, because there wasn't any water pressure up there in San Bruno, and they had to run how many miles of hose in order to?
About a mile.
About a mile of hose in order to fight the fire. There, you know, Peter has a lot more background with the wildfire firefighting, but you know, that's kind of their expertise, and we have a lot of wilderness areas, especially around the slack, and it's kind of, I think it's important that we all work together with the amount of calls for service in there. You know, I think we should go through the process, as Peter suggested, number 5, and during that time period, not stop for critical services.
Yeah, and you know, I can't speak for our firefighters, but I can certainly, I would not want to see the day come when our firefighters drove to the boundary of the fire district and stopped and watched the fire burn. I doubt that they would do that, regardless of what the reimbursement situation was. And that's the old style of fire stuff where you put a plaque in front of your house when you paid for fire insurance, and if you didn't have a plaque on the house, they didn't fight the fire. To their great credit, the fire chiefs and the firefighters in this county have dropped boundaries, and they said our first and most important responsibility is to respond promptly with the nearest equipment whenever a fire takes place. This is an anomaly. My hope and expectation is that we can solve it. I would reverse the order that Director Bernstein has suggested. I would move forward with option 5. If that's unsuccessful, then we can come back to it. But I don't want to hold the people in this area hostage to those negotiations. And there should be no doubt in their minds that they're going to get fire protection. And if it comes to the point where the county says, sorry, we're not going to do it, you know, then we can revisit the issue. That's my position. So I would continue, I would vote in favor of the motion to continue to provide service.
So under the automatic, just so you understand how the automatic aid agreement works too, is its closest unit. So you have to separate, to your point, you have to separate how we operationally work, because Director Bernstein, I think the part that is foreign for us in, you know, what you're presenting is, that's not how we operate. We don't, the firefighters aren't going to pay attention to, you know, what they don't protect. They just go because that's what they get told to do. And, you know, it'd be very difficult to say we're not going to go to that address because, you know, we don't get paid, or that's the county area. That's not how it works in the county. In fact, it hasn't worked that way since fire marks years ago, and that's why we got rid of that system. But, you know, the bigger issue here is compensation. So you got to separate response versus compensation. There's nowhere that we don't go. In fact, if anything, you know, we're trying to strengthen our agreements with Palo Alto and other entities. So I mean, I'm not trying to disagree with you in terms of, you know, your thought process, but the system doesn't even allow for that to happen, because it's been created over time that we don't end up with those situations where nobody's responding because, you know, somebody's not paying the bill. I mean, that's not even in the nature of a firefighter to be able to do that.
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, what is your recommendation, Chief, and your staff on these?
Well, we haven't talked about it at staff. I think, again, I would recommend we separate the response versus the annexation piece. The response piece, again, I wouldn't know how to even unplug something, because that's not how we operate or how we work. But on the annexation side, I say we annex it, and then we attempt to recover the funding for it.
Thank you.
That would be my recommendation.
So, and then I picked up my first motion is based on the staff recommendation to continue to serve.
Yeah.
And I would like to call the question.
Okay, say it.
So Chuck, I'm gonna say this because I'm a taxpayer. I think everyone at this table is a taxpayer. And I think it would be horrible if we didn't cover them. I would never want that to happen.
Okay, you're.
I would never want that to happen, and
Oh,
the
okay.
taxpayer
Oh, all right,
is
thank
part
you.
of the community.
Okay.
So I just want that to be on the record. I'm glad that there's automatic, who knows, we may need something in the future. Pay it back. So I'm ready to call the question.
So the question, the motion on it is not to,
Stop
To-
service.
Yes, to continue to provide service to this area.
okay. It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the second motion is that we adopt as our moving forward, that we annex the service area and petition the county for a property tax shift at the current tax rate.
I'll
It's option
second,
5 in the staff report.
Okay.
and I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
Could I ask the council, do we have any legal remedy if in fact the county turned down funding for the annexation?
In order for there to be an annexation, there has to be an agreement on the transfer of property taxes. And the counties in California were very reluctant to give up any property taxes. So if there is no agreement over the division of taxes, you could have one of two situations. You annex without getting any property taxes, or you don't annex. There have been situations where the annexing authority has sued the county, but that's generally been when the county is not only refusing to give you the property taxes you're entitled to, but asking you to create revenue neutrality for the county by giving them some of your other revenue. You've seen situations where cities have been forced to turn over sales tax revenue, transient occupancy tax revenue, utility user tax revenue, in order to get the county to come to an agreement on a property tax division where the property tax is not going to be divided anywhere. So there's a revenue neutrality issue that counties have, and that usually enters into these negotiations. So I don't know how San Mateo County is going to approach it. They may be willing to turn over the property tax that's allocable to this particular piece of property, but they may feel that they can't afford to because they have other services that are unpaid for with the property tax they have.
So we just follow up then, we would then have a choice to not accept the annexation if money were not forthcoming. That would be part of a negotiating process.
If you can't come to an agreement with the county, you can either go ahead and annex with no property taxes being divided, or you can.
And if we annex with no property taxes, could we still sue for relief?
No, there's nothing to sue over because you haven't reached an agreement. It's a bilateral agreement between the county and the district over those taxes. And the way that the county's got the state to write the statute, there's no remedy.
There is no remedy to, so they
Not
have
the last time
control.
I checked, there wasn't.
There's no judicial review of that.
So then, we decide we're gonna petition them, formally petition them to LAFCO to annex.
Right.
Well, and the tax shift, the property
And,
tax shift. It's
and
an
renewal
and,
property
it's
tax
not a
sharing
tax
agreement with the
shift.
county.
It is
Right.
an and.
Right. You have to see what happens. I don't know what the county's position has been on these things.
So essentially, our options are preserved until that time.
Yeah. Right.
Well, what their position will be, and it's been kind of historically, is we're not gonna shift the property tax over.
Right.
And, you know, this is kind of the unsaid portion. There's a lot of other county areas that are serviced by fire agencies that they're not compensated for.
Right.
They may be closer to a fire station, to Director Bernstein's point, where they can provide the service, but I think what they're worried about has been that you see this massive shift towards, you know, where's our funding for the areas that we're servicing? Because we're kind of opening Pandora's box, but we're unique because we're 7 miles away from their firehouse. At the same time, if we're successful, then it may open the floodgates elsewhere in the county. That seems to be what the concern is. But
Yeah, you think?
we've heard that, but we've been working on this for years, so I mean, you never know until you ask the question.
So let me, if we annexed it, we said, okay, we're gonna annex it, and you're not gonna give us the property tax. Historically, because we have annexed it and it belongs to us and we respond to it, we go back at a later date and say, we've serviced the area and we responded to it, it's actually annexed into our district. We would like to recoup the property tax. Does that give you any legal standing?
No.
The only,
The one thing you could do, and I'm just throwing this out off the top of my head, but you could make as a condition of your annexation that the residents vote in a fire suppression
Right,
tax, a
and
special
that's
tax.
one of the.
Fire suppression assessments are made all the time. They could vote themselves as fire suppression assessments that's equivalent to property tax. That means they have to pay twice, but they're already paying that property tax and it's still gonna go to the county. County's not gonna give you any of it, so they're paying extra to ensure your continued service, your continued prompt service from that fire station.
See, my sense is that the only court that we're gonna win in on this is the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
And in the court of the public opinion, the first thing we have to do is provide service. And I think the first vote that we've taken tonight assures that we're gonna continue to do that. And now, we do the best we can to negotiate with the county. We're not gonna do anything different than we did yesterday. And if we get some more money, that's great, and if we don't, then, you know, this is just one of the issues that we keep sticking a needle in them about. But we don't have, you know, the worst thing we could do is to say we're not gonna provide service. Because then we lose from day one in the court of public opinion, as well as in the support of our own firefighters, who are not gonna go to Sand Hill Road, or to Alpine Road and stop. You know, you're just not gonna do that, thank God. So, my sense is that 5 is the best we can do, and we'll make the best out of it. And then we'll come back and talk about how well we did. And in the meantime, what we don't have sitting out there is a decision that we've made that we're not gonna serve the area, which makes us look like the bad guys.
And the bottom line is that tomorrow, nothing has changed at all.
No.
Well, I mean, that's the whole reason.
And basically the direction to staff and a request to the board is, let's work together to try to get the county to agree to provide some level of compensation. We'll do the best we can.
So if it gets annexed, just so you know what the tangibles are, and you've raised this before, Director, which is, one, we then get to set the response profile for that area, because currently it's a county response block. So we have no control over what resources go in there, other than it's the closest and they run a sequence in there. The other part will be, it will fall under our Fire Prevention Bureau if we annex it. And then the last thing will be, as you've mentioned before, that those people then can vote for the board of directors in the fire district. So those are, you know, I don't want to say there's not other things, those are things that then become in our control, including fire prevention ordinances and so forth.
That's what they call representation without taxation.
Pretty much.
Well,
That's
they're
where we
getting
are.
taxed, just,
Well,
you're
and
just
remember,
a-
this
We
goes
don't get it.
this goes back to 2000.
Sounds like a rally.
This goes back to 2007, when LAFCO itself, under the sphere review, recommended that you annex this area into the district.
Yes.
And up until that point, the misnomer was, you know, was that this was part of the fire district already. But it's that kind of fingered in area that nobody really understood that it was not part of the fire district. So the irony is, you know, they recommend that you annex, but as Martha said, but she can't address the property tax issue. That's the county board of supervisors.
I just want to ask one more quick question. Do you have any idea how CAL FIRE contracts with the county? Do they get paid on some sort of per capita basis, or?
They get paid, there's a contract. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know there's always concern on the CAL FIRE side that the contract is not adequate to cover all the costs for them to be within San Mateo County. So, you know, depends on who you talk to. If you talk to the county, it's too expensive. If you talk to CAL FIRE, it's not expensive enough, and they're not getting all the revenues, which I believe they're not getting all the revenues from the property taxes that are being collected. And just because the county collects the property tax as a fire tax doesn't mean they have to give it to the vendor.
I mean, they're siphoning off some of that for other uses?
I would presume, and I've never looked at the books, but if my sources at CAL FIRE are correct, the money that they collect for fire tax across the county doesn't necessarily go for all the fire services.
So,
I'll call the question.
there's, question's been called for. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Passes by 5-0.
Okay,
Um,
moving on.
That brings us to 19. Discussion on a request from Director Carpenter that the board reconsider its direction from staff regarding planning for the new downtown station as a result of Measure M. And
I'll be glad to take.
go ahead.
Basically, in June, we said, until we know how the outcome of this election is going to take place, don't expend additional funds which have not already been committed. And we clarified that we had made some commitments to the city of Menlo Park, and those commitments were to be fulfilled. And so now that that measure has been defeated, I thought it was very appropriate to come back to us, and we then provide new direction to staff as to what they should do. I've had some discussions with the chief. I've raised some concerns on my part. If you build out the downtown as planned, does that footprint of those two parcels provide us with sufficient square footage so that we can put in place a station that would serve that area? And I think the chief feels that they can. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
And given that input from the chief, I would recommend that we rescind the motion that we passed in June.
And that what you're making the motion?
Well, that, what we have to do in terms of the way the agenda goes, we're going to provide direction to staff. And so
Right.
direction to staff would be to come back at our December meeting with a specific proposal with respect to what we do with Station 6.
Okay.
And other people may have guidance that they wish to give the chief or other thoughts on this. But that's the way we deal with director-initiated items. We bring them to the board, and the board gets to say yes or no, if we want to proceed with that director-initiated item. And so that's the question before the board tonight. Do we want the staff to come back to us in December with a recommendation as to what we should do with Station 6?
Do I need to put that in the form of a motion, Stephen?
I don't think so. I think just direction to
Just a
staff.
direction.
Yeah.
Just have a consensus.
If the chief understands the direction, then that's good.
Okay. And that's what I would like to do, yes.
I just have a comment though, and I don't know why, I've had the discussion with the chief about some of these issues. As I understand, we're going to have a standards of coverage study. It's going to go out in December, and by March, we're going to have an analysis of the coverage of our stations and so forth. And this is not in any way to disagree or counter what Peter said, but it just seems to me that if the board wants to rescind an action, that's fine, but we shouldn't make decisions necessarily about where we have stations and what size they are and what kind of response times we're going to have until we have the standards of coverage study available in March.
But the other part of that is that irregardless of whether you think you need another station or what, but that station now serves a specific area, and it's going to serve it as long as that area is there.
Well, maybe, but maybe the study would tell us something different. I don't know, I'm just saying that.
Well, I think that's probably one of the things the chief and the staff can take into consideration is they come back to us at the December meeting and say, this is what we recommend. Right now, we have put the staff in a position of this is on hold. Further expenditures beyond this point. And I think we as a board need to decide whether to rescind that June 15th resolution motion or whether to allow, if we don't do anything, that's the direction to staff. And so I'm saying, okay, now that we know the answer to that question on Measure M, come back to us, what do you recommend we do? Part of your recommendation will be, how does this relate to any standards of coverage study, et cetera, et cetera.
Which, and Director Bernstein and I discussed that real briefly, but just so you know, when we purchased the lot behind the station, and Director Bernstein doesn't know this, and we only had a brief conversation, we did look at the former standards of coverage study, And that's why we chose to not move the station, because for what it would cost us to go elsewhere, as maybe ideal as it would have been, we were in actually a pretty strategic location where we were. So I'm perfectly happy to come back in December, which we had kind of planned on anyway, to give you an idea of where we were in the process with the city, because that's all been moving forward independently of all Measure M. And so we'll have an update for you, I guess, in December, so you can, you know, make your own decisions. Because the key issue is still going to be the lot merger. That's the big one, and I think we're almost there, and we're going to have our answer pretty quickly if that's either
From the
gonna
city?
happen. Yeah, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. But you know, just know it's been so far. The district has put about almost $500,000 into the project. So even doing anything differently that would be a loss to the district in terms of effort and cost. Doesn't mean you don't do it. You know, we'll give the justification, I think, for, you know, moving forward if all the stars are lining up. But we'll have our answer pretty soon. And hopefully by the next December meeting on, I think it is the 16th. So.
Yes.
I just want to add one other point. It's not even addressing that station, but I think the issue is really important when we're looking at the projected growth in the M2 area, and whether Station 77 is big enough to serve that, what's going to happen with East Palo Alto, and whether we should have another station over there somehow. I mean, I think this study is really an important thing for knowing what we're going to do over the next 20 years, and it relates to some of the capital spending that I think I'd be interested in looking at next year.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that would be good information to have too.
Yeah, and
I
again,
mean,
you know,
even if we know it, we don't really know the.
they'll look at all those plans that are developed, or, you know, what we know, and Tim Kremen's been really good at putting that together for us. But that's the, you know, for me right now, standards of cover will be about really two things. And that'll come to you as well in December. Because we just got RFPs back from 4 vendors, so we'll have those come before the board. But it will be about not just location, because I think we're pretty good on what we have so far. There may be a few tweaks in there. It's really going to be about deployment, because that's going to be the challenge. And I think, as the firefighters can tell you here, our issue right now is more about how do you get the fire truck from here to there, especially if it's on this side of the freeway versus the other side. And then what happens if you don't have enough fire trucks over there? Because it's getting harder and harder to get from anywhere in the district, but let alone on the other side of the freeway. And so, you know, we're going to really need to take a close look at how we're doing deployment and what these jurisdictions are planning to do in terms of growth. I mean, everybody's planning to grow larger, as I've written in an email not too long ago, or an update. They all want to get bigger, but then they want to reduce the size of the roadways. It doesn't work so well with big pieces of equipment. So, you know, it's an interesting problem. I don't have an answer for you other than standards of cover study will be something we can hand to all our constituent agencies and say, here's what this says. You know, this is why you can't do some of these things, or you need to do it differently. But
We have a school in Pleasanton, so we have 2, and I go out there frequently, and I don't know how far apart they are, but almost all their stations now are 2 or 3 bays, and they're just putting a lot more equipment in the stations.
yeah. Well, and that will be, you know, when you look at, as Director Carpenter mentioned, at 6, I mean, ideally, you know, could we have that? There's no land there unless you do the eminent domain. But I think we're good because it's central to the district. That's why they used to close that station, because they could get away with it and have coverage. It's going to be the periphery stations like 4, 3, 5, where you can get to the middle easy. You just can't get to the outside as fast. So those are the key places to have more equipment.
Will it also deal with the size of equipment and things like that?
They'll have to. I mean, one thing, you know, just, again, I don't know what we've told you or you know, that's the reason we built Station 2 as large as we did, because it could fit any size of configuration of apparatus. And that's been a historical problem. We can't even put a tiller ladder truck in this station here at Station 1 because you can't back it in the station. It doesn't fit. So what it does, it limits us in configurations we can use because of the size. And so all the new stations, even Station 6, you can still fit the biggest piece of equipment in there, and it's a drive-through. That was the criteria we set for all future stations.
Biggest piece of Okay.
And that's where this general plan thing with Menlo Park is so important. You basically want to say to them, hey guys, you know, we do our stations on sort of a 50-year life cycle.
Right.
And so, you know, we have to have the capacity to, and the message I've been given to people is, go look at Station 2. And that's the footprint that we really ought to have for every station, you know, except in those situations where it's physically impossible. You know, and you know, we'll have a hard time with Station 3, you know, putting
Well,
on Station 2
unless you
configuration.
move 3 and 5, which has been proposed before to consolidate. And the other one was Station 4, when I started here, had a ladder truck, a squad, and an engine in it. Has a single engine in it now, and we've added on slack. So that's a bigger, you know, that's another footprint we could look at. Once we get 2 done and 6 going, then maybe we look at 1 and 4, because those are key stations too.
And my sense is with the M2 thing that, you know, we just need to sort of abandon 77 and say, hey guys, you know, we're going to look for a footprint where we can put another Station 2 configuration in the M2 area.
Remember, we don't own
That'll be-
subdivision land.
That'll be important to be talking about when they're talking about how to zone them too.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why I want to try to get into this general plan, the concept of having a fire services zone, which is specific to us, because there's no other public facility that has the characteristics of a fire station. You know, we don't have customer parking. We don't have a requirement for open space, etc. We do have certain vertical needs that are somewhat unique. And so when you talk about those kinds of things, and you make it fire specific, I think that it's it's much easier to sell that to the public than say, well, any PF facility can have these characteristics. It's like, no, this is because of the nature of the job we do, this is the kind of zoning we want to have. Now, we may lose that battle, but I think we ought to try.
Agreed.
So are you clear on your direction?
I will bring back a report to you in December.
All right.
And we need to take an action on the prior motion.
So we'll
From the
We'll
June
notify
30th.
you
We'll
if that's your recommendation.
We need to rescind, we may need to rescind.
Right. Okay,
So that brings us to public comment number 3, which means that you can talk about anything that's not on the agenda. So if you want to talk about anything, now's the time. If you don't,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
those in favor?
All right,
Let's call it.
Thank you.
thank you.
We'll talk to you before then.